Today's video will be made by the Egg Bot.
I'm just kidding. It's me. Hey, Rugrats. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, and I hope that you are having a great day. In today's video, we are going to be discussing a card game that a lot of people have been asking me to cover for a bit now, and I'm quite surprised by it. It is the Sorcery Contested Realm TCG, which I'm going to confess I do not have a lot of personal experience with because I have not had a chance to play the game yet. Even though it has been out for quite some time, it's just not something that I've had the opportunity to sit down, learn, and play. But regardless, I will still give you kids my first impression of the game from when I first heard about it, as well as what I think about it now and where it's going. Now, for those of you who don't know, Sorcery actually started life as a Kickstarter TCG, and I know that there are some people out there in the internet who have their own strong opinions about Kickstarter TCGs. I have some pretty strong opinions myself, but regardless, it was fully backed back in 2022, with the first set releasing in 2023, with an alpha version of the set which went to the Kickstarter backers, and then a beta version of the set which was made available to the wider public. And when Sorcery launched, there was a huge wave of buzz on the internet. There was a bunch of Magic content creators, for instance, who were heavily promoting the game, more or less just based on its old school fantasy feel, as well as their own positive opinions on its rule set, the overall flow of the game, etc. Like I saw a lot of really positive opinions about it last year when it first released, and while the overall hype levels have died down, the positive reception that the game received kind of hasn't. I haven't heard a lot of overwhelmingly negative opinions about it. The second set released not 3 months later, not 6 months later, but almost a full year later. The second set of Sorcery is called Arthurian Legends, and it only released in October of 2024, just over a month ago now, which is really, really crazy to me, because that's a whole year between set releases, which is not really something that you see in the world of TCGs. Even for brand new games, they tend to have a much tighter release cycle, And I'm not entirely sure what the roadmap for Sorcery is. I'm only, again, very, very bare bones informed of the game. But if it does maintain this one set a year release schedule, then that leads to some pretty interesting possibilities for the future, as well as its own unique set of pros and cons for the game. On one hand, a less frequent release schedule allows the players and fans to get more comfortable with the game's meta, its overall play environment. Instead of racing to try and solve the new meta with the various cards coming out every 3 months or so, they can get more comfortable with the state of the game as it is, which can go a long way towards fostering a sense of community with the players as the player base grows. In addition, not having a new set every 3 to 6 months or every 2 weeks or so for some card games does eliminate a lot of the chance for fatigue to really settle in, and it also really kind of pushes the FOMO out the window. After all, if there's less sets being pushed out, there's less stress on the players, collectors, etc. to kind of decide which one to pick up. Whereas with other card games that have constant release schedules, players, collectors, even stores at times can be hard-pressed to choose where to put their money in regards to which upcoming set they want to buy. On the other hand, having to wait longer between set releases is good if those individual sets are good. After all, if a new set is bad, and you have to wait a year to get some new cards that are good, that can chase away players. Moreover, players that are more comfortable with the more frequent release cycles of other games, they might get antsy in anticipation of whatever is on the horizon, which can also cause some player shrinkage as these guys go to other card games for their fix, and by the time the next Sorcery set has even come out, they've already forgotten about it. Which is a problem because part of just the natural life cycle of trading card games is that players do just kind of grow up and move on from whatever they're playing at the time over a very small period, 2 years, 2 to 3 years. And I feel like with Sorcery, they're going to have the unique challenge of trying to maintain player interest with a less frequent release schedule, which doesn't really have an answer I can give. I'm sure that the people behind the card game have given that some thought, but it is something to keep an eye on. Another kind of good thing, but more neutral, is the fact that since there is such a small amount of product for Sorcery on the market in terms of number of sets, it allows us to more closely scrutinize and analyze those individual sets in a way that we really haven't had a chance with other TCGs in the past. And when this time comes around next year and Sorcery is staring down that 2-year wall that so many card games have failed to surpass, we're going to be able to get a really good look at not only the state of the game with how few sets it'll have at the time, but also how those individual sets potentially have an effect on the long-term health of the game. Another thing that I think is worth talking about when it comes to Sorcery is how the card game puts a lot of emphasis on its art. It's not only kind of heavily featured in their advertising, but even on their main website, they cite their art is a huge pull of the game, calling it a return to the golden age of fantasy art. And there is definitely something to that, but if you're a long-term fan of this channel, then you already know how I feel about advertising your game only with art. We've seen it before with a little-known gem known as Hyborian Gates, and advertising with art alone didn't do too well for Hyborian Gates, and Sorcery reuses some of that art. Now, to be completely fair, it's clear that art is not all that Sorcery has, and it's not all that it's using to advertise the game either. The content creators and various videos I've followed for the game do a really good job of showcasing not only the basic gameplay, but also how easy the rules are to understand, even though I'm a bit too dumb to understand them, as well as just how to improve your overall skills at the game, as well as all the nice little Easter eggs the game has. But if we do focus on the art for a second, it's clear that Sorcery is proud of its art portfolio, and they do have some pretty heavy hitters in their art portfolio. Seb McKinnon, Jeff Easley, Melissa Benson, I think I saw, as well as just a load of other really great fantasy artists, which helps to give Sorcery that classic fantasy feel that a lot of people on the market have been desiring for a long time, which is just really great. You know I have disparaged Hyborian Gates for heavily advertising its art, but when it's done right, and art is not the only thing a card game has, the art itself becomes a beautiful addition to a card game and something that everybody can enjoy. I don't remember seeing Therese Nielsen or the Foglios on any Sorcery cards, but they have Seb McKinnon. I'll take what I can get. Now, I'm not going to go into the rules for Sorcery. All I can say is from what I have seen, all the videos I've watched, it plays very, very differently from pretty much every TCG on the market. The reason I'm not going to go into the rules is because for all the videos I've watched, I still have absolutely no idea how the game is played. I've had the rules explained to me in excruciating detail in one of the videos. I think the Magic Historian went over the basics at one point, and I just could not grasp it, which maybe I'm just dumb, Maybe I shouldn't be playing all these card games. Maybe my brain isn't built for it. But yeah, it definitely plays completely different from every TCG I've seen. At least all the ones that I'm pretty familiar with. There are some that it reminds me of, like Mythos sort of, kind of, not really, but yeah, it's definitely a breath of fresh air. And if you're looking for something different, it's definitely got different going on. Now, as for the market health of the game, I'm not keeping a real close eye on the TCG player sales for Sorcery. But if you look at the most recent set, Arthurian Legends, which came out back in October, you'll see that it has a daily average of about 14 boxes sold per day, which doesn't sound crazy or anything, but compare it to the newest Disney Lorcana set, Azurite Sky, which has a daily box sale of about 20 per day, and that set just came out like 2 weeks ago. So when you compare those, you'll see that, or at least you get the idea that Arthurian Legends is pretty popular, even if it's been out for a while. And there's clearly just some demand for the set, which is always nice to see for a smaller TCG. Overall, I think Sorcery Contested Realms is a very fun-looking trading card game, one that at some point I definitely do want to try out, learn how to play, get a deck of my own, and have fun with it. It looks like Sorcery has broken through and escaped the Kickstarter curse, and I'm very curious to see where it's at next year around this same time, as that 2-year wall starts to creep up on the game. I'm curious what challenges it'll face, what difficulties it might run into, and how it will hurdle over them. And if it can survive that 2-year wall, then I think Sorcery is a card game that will be around for a while, especially since, again, it does have that dedicated, really, really passionate fan base of players, collectors, investors, etc. And it does have just a lot of nice art that I do think really, really is just beautiful to look at and might go on in the future to become some really highly desired collector's pieces. So those are my thoughts on the game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below, and remember all that good stuff. If you liked this video, subscribe, leave a like, comment, share with a buddy, all that jazz. If you want to help me out, I am on TCG Player. You can buy some cards from me. And remember, your uncle needs to get healthy. So for every like this video gets, I'll be doing a push-up in the next one. And I will see you kids then. My last video got 22 likes. Woo, that's 22.